happening soon, but for those of you that are not U.S. citizens yet, alam ko marami sa atin ang ganyan, you have to pay attention because guess what? The way you file your taxes may affect your immigration status. Pag-usapan natin yan ngayong hapon sa ating American Dream.
This American Dream segment is brought to you by Aquino & Lowe Law Firm, answering your immigration questions.
Attorney Richard Lowe, hello and welcome to Kababayan LA, Kawashima versus Holder. What's going on and what can we learn?
Well, this was a quiet case that came out of the Supreme Court, but has really made big waves in the immigration community. Basically, if you file a tax return and you are convicted of filing a false tax return and where the amounts that the government is not getting is more than $10,000, that's an aggravated felony, even if the charge itself may have been a misdemeanor.
But the problem is sometimes these people, they file taxes, they don't know this. And the most important thing for the immigration courts is that you can get deported.
That's right. Yes. You can get deported, even being a long-time permanent resident, which Kawashima was in this case. Since 1984, the Kawashimas were permanent residents, so a long time, but that wasn't enough, and the court found that they had acted in a way that was fraudulent, and therefore it was an aggravated felony.
All right, so two lessons to be learned from this case. The first one is, as soon as, I know we've talked about this before, as soon as you're ready, eligible to file for your citizenship, you have to file.
Absolutely. I just don't see the point in waiting. I mean, so many things can go wrong as a permanent resident. For example, just filing this tax returns. And what's sad about it, too, is that this was a couple, so the wife is responsible for the husband's tax filing, so she gets sucked into all these problems. So as a permanent resident, I think you need to be careful in how you behave, but you need to become a U.S. citizen.
If they were citizens, if they had been citizens and had to face these charges, what would have happened?
Well, they would have just faced the criminal process. They would have just been in the criminal process, which they had done. They had done about 4 months in prison. And they paid back, I think it was over $200,000 that they had cheated out of the government. They paid that all back, and then that would have been the end of it.
Right.
But because they're permanent residents, they were then put into removal proceedings.
Wow, and now you're going to get deported as well. So we cannot overemphasize this, or we cannot emphasize enough. You have to file for your citizenship as soon as you are eligible. The second lesson is, be careful when you're filing your taxes, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of times, we as Americans and people living in this country take filing of taxes a little bit for granted, like we just think, well, we're just going to fill it out quickly, or we're going to have so-and-so do it, and if they get us a bigger return, that's great, and we don't really pay attention to the ins and outs of what's going on. This is really important that people pay attention to what's going on the returns, that they are responsible for what's going on, and that little things can affect what happens down the road.
So if you are, quote-unquote, cheating the government of $10,000 and more, or more than $10,000 on your taxes, that is an aggravated felony.
It could be, yeah.
Yes. Okay. And some tips now on what to remember when we're filing taxes. The first one is, the year you're married is the year you must file as a married couple. Why are you putting emphasis on this? Do people make mistakes?
All the time. Let's say that you go out and elope and, on New Year's Eve, right? Many people think, well, it was December 31st, it's the end of the year, I'm not a married person until, the next year, in 2011 or 2012. But you are the day that you file, with the year that day occurs in, that's the year that you must file as married. So even though the whole year, 364 days, you were unmarried,
right,
because the one day you were married, the whole year you have to file as married.
Say, for example, 2011, let's say I got married December 31st. So when I file now for my 2011 taxes, that must be filed as a couple.
As a married couple, yes.
Oh, another one. If you are married, head of the household is usually not an appropriate category. What does that mean?
I see this all the time, where some tax consultants will recommend that their clients put head of the household even though they're married because they have a child, and that's not always the appropriate way. I mean, head of the household is a specific requirement for people who are living without their spouse in their house. They're living with their child, and maybe their spouse is away in another country or something like that. And it's not always appropriate, but because it gives you more money, this is a frequent place that people put you in because they want to give you a bigger return.
So if you're living together with a spouse, no one is head of the household. You file joint together.
You're supposed to file joint.
No one is head.
That's right.
Okay. All money you earn must be reported, including cash, This is very difficult to follow. Let's be honest.
Yeah, you know, especially if you're in certain industries, if you're a waiter or if you're working in a cash business getting tips. I mean, there are reporting requirements from the restaurant industry. But, we're talking this on a large scale. If you're doing a business and this is your only thing that you're doing and you're making $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year and that's how you're supporting yourself, you're not going to look very good putting down, I made $350 over the year and still be able to say, how are you supporting your wife? How are you supporting your kids?
And actually, not just cash, even in-kind items that are given to you. Say you're doing this and in exchange you get a house and lot, or you get a house, or you get a unit, or even when you get it somewhere else, not here in California, maybe in Florida, maybe in the Philippines, you have to report that. Otherwise, you'll be liable.
That's right.
And so the last lesson is use a very good accountant, reputable accountant.
Absolutely. I think, we get, pressured sometimes by family members. Oh, my cousin is a tax attorney or my cousin is a tax person. But, you really should use somebody that is reputable. You should use somebody that has experience doing these things. And particularly if you are itemizing, if you're doing a complex return, you need somebody who's going to be knowing the ins and outs of the tax code.
And for immigration issues, you need somebody that knows immigration, and that is Aquino & Low Law Firm. That's the number to call on the screen if you want to schedule your appointment. Now, thank you so much, and more power to you.
Thank you.
We'll be back more on Kababayan LA Boxing News when we return. Don't go away.